Welcome, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining me for another episode of Talking Cloud. Now, this is where we talk about cloud, all things cloud, anything cloud, and it is such an enormous word. It's literally a computing platform that's in every aspect of our lives and every aspect of computing. Now, you all know I'm no expert, but I know where to find them. And man, I'm so jazzed about my guest today. I haven't known him a real long time, but great deal of respect for TJ. The guy has been a long time in the biz, early in the cloud before we all talked about it like we do today. Long tail in encryption and the industry overall. So it's going to be a great conversation. I met him after Dome 9 was acquired by Check Point. That was kind of the real running downhill, if you will, I think, for Check Point to go after the cloud. And Protego was also a key acquisition, and we were fortunate to get TJ with Protego, and he's just taken the bull by the horns and ran. It's really exciting to have him today. He's the head of cloud security products. Did I get it right, TJ? I'm not sure if I did. TJ, Gonen, welcome. Glad you're here, man. Thanks for being on the program.
Hey, Grant. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you got it right. We're good.
Okay, cool. So, hey, just for a sec, so people get a little bit of the Z-axis, so to speak. Give them some perspective on you and your career.
Yeah, so I grew up in Israel. So, like a lot of people in the cybersecurity industry in Israel, I started in the intelligence corps where Gil Shwed and a bunch of people, Dorit, and a bunch of people from Checkpoint started in the 8200 unit. Cyber was not a thing. It was information security, and I dealt with a lot of stuff around tech and networking and security. There was no cyber security, and honestly, it was way less cool than today to be in that space. We were the nerds. It's not like today that the nerds own the world.
Yep.
And and after the army, so I studied electrical engineering in Israel also, and then started a company in the encryption space. Started another one actually, believe it or not, in the CRM as a service. We started the same week as Salesforce.
Wow.
They are Salesforce, and I shut it down when the .com bubble exploded. Did a bunch of things. Aladdin Knowledge Systems in Israel got acquired by a company in the US here called SafeNet. Moved to the US 12 years ago. Been here in Maryland since. Ran marketing, strategy, the business unit, and a lot of stuff around encryption and cloud. And then started my own company, Protego Labs, like you mentioned.
Yep.
And got acquired by Check Point and joined the forces.
Yeah, terrific. And you've done a great job, I'll add, since you've been on board, and I know played a very key and instrumental role in helping us continue to really expand on our overall cloud strategy. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting. I don't know how many people realized, certainly you did, how badly a cloud platform is required, right? That kind of one pogo stick item doesn't work in the way the cloud has evolved. It's just not possible, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think what happened over the last 10 years, when I first heard about the term cloud 10 years ago or 12 years ago, whenever Amazon launched their first EC2 service, and what's going on today, honestly, it doesn't feel like 10 years or 12 years. It is such a huge revolution. And what it brought to the IT space as a whole is such a huge disruption, which only makes sense that the disruption in what it means for security is as big.
Yep.
And people had to evolve. And I think, you mentioned you can with Dom 9, when Dom 9 was really one of the first pioneers in this area of cloud security. And when what was defined cloud security then was very, very early on, just, a small piece of what it is today.
Yep.
And yeah, totally evolved. And yeah, you need a platform. You need something that can move at the speed of the cloud.
Yeah.
Because I think what people find out really fast is that the cloud is just way too fast for whatever it was before the cloud.
It's really unbelievable. And I was mentioning to you, there's this report, the state of the, what is it called? State of the cloud, right? Yeah. But man, 750,000 employees or more were kind of the sampling, and 93% have a multi-cloud strategy.
That's insane. Yeah.
I mean, 93%. 20% spend more than $12 million a year on public cloud.
Makes sense. Yeah. And if they counted SaaS at that report, the number would be just insane, right?
Yeah.
I think the cloud just took over IT. And it's been so swift, and the last year has made it even more extreme.
Yeah. More than 50% of enterprise workloads and data are expected to be in the cloud within the next 12 months. That's 12 remarkable.
Months. Wow. Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
It is. I mean, and this is fall last year, so fairly fresh data.
Right.
65% are using Docker for containers. 58 are using Kubernetes.
Right.
It's such a fluid space.
It is. Yeah. And I think to your point, there's what happened is, and you see that throughout maybe technology in the last 10, 20 years, is that the speed of change, even within cloud. So what was considered cloud 10 years ago is really so old today. I used to say, because my company, Protego, we were in the serverless security space.
Yeah.
So serverless is really on the cutting edge of cloud, is these pieces of code that run in the cloud. We don't even have a machine, right?
Yeah.
And in serverless, we used to say EC2, which is the AWS's original service, right? The virtual machine. We used to say EC2 is the new on-prem. That's how old it is. EC2 is the new on-prem.
Yeah.
Because what? You're running virtual machines in the cloud. Oh my God, you're so behind.
Yeah.
Today you run code, and everything is ephemeral, and it just runs. So the speed of change is insane, even within what we define as cloud.
Yep, and I think, don't you think what happens too, TJ, is almost exclusively, we in the business talk about it every day, all day long, and sometimes we get a little myopic, right? And we forget how this stuff, the world, for the most part, really doesn't understand how broad, how comprehensive the cloud is, how easy it is to scratch the paint and get into some pretty technical stuff really fast, right? It's pretty amazing, and really the power is returning to the developers and the nerds, right?
Totally. And I think the people, speaking of cloud and what it means to for most of us, for my wife, it's she just knows that she goes, opens a browser, and everything is there.
Yep.
That's it. That's so I think for the average Joe that's not building stuff in the cloud or selling cloud or doing stuff like that, what cloud means is accessibility.
Yep.
It's just there, right? That's what it means to them. And I think you're right. For us, for people there, one of the biggest revolution, I think it's great that you actually noted it, because one of the biggest revolutions that cloud brought is the developer revolution. Yep. And it is it's an immense revolution. I don't think that even people in the cloud space fully figured out how huge that revolution is.
Yep.
And the people who figured it out, by the way, first, if you look background, is AWS. AWS built their cloud for developers. It is not built for consumers. It's not. They don't even. Just enough to look at their user interface.
Yep.
It definitely for developers.
No question. And actually, if you really look at how they operate. It's very conducive to that developer mind. I'm going to give you everything you need to find out how to get it done. Right?
And you go build.
There's
right? You go build.
Yep. They don't give you a phone number to call and ask for help, right? I mean, I challenge you to find one, right? Because most of them don't want it, right?
No, they need the README file, and documentation, and the API, and give me the APIs.
Exactly.
And and they're so adamant about it. And everything they do on AWS is focused on making the developer's life easier, so you can go, and then they literally say it, go build. And it is such a huge revolution, and it's starting to impact every facet of the business. Once the developer because the cloud empowered the developer to be the king. Yeah. He can now move faster than anyone else in the organization. There's no one. Yep. And all organizations today are so powered by IT and dependent on IT. It doesn't matter who you are. Bank of America used to be a branch office. Today it's an app.
Yep. Yep.
So the developer owns the customer experience way more than the branch manager or the people who build branches or the clerk or whatever. The developer owns the experience. Have you seen, move faster than anyone else.
Have you seen the more recent production of King Arthur? That's what I think of, right? This guy, literally, this is the developer now, right? He was raised by the prostitutes, but now he's the guy, that he can draw the sword from the stone, and he is the guy, and he does almost have those superpowers, right?
Because he can move faster than anyone else. He can make stuff happen. By him, it makes or break the user experience, your competitive advantage. He's the one that you maintain. Today, I think in a lot of traditional organizations, the developer is the most valued type of professional or employee in the company more than anyone else.
No question. No question. But I guess, like his brother demonstrated, also equally as dangerous if you want to keep on that, whole King Arthur thing, right? I mean, the developer, that is a tremendous power, tremendous capability. But I guess that probably is where you immediately start to wrap in the notion of zero trust and really re-architecting everything so that you're looking at everything differently, albeit he or she still has the power, but you are now putting on, as I think you so appropriately put, the guardrails to keep them on the asphalt, right?
Right.
Or you lay down the asphalt, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, the paved road, I say.
Yes.
The paved road, yeah. I think that there's actually the concept of motion or movement from a guardrail to paved road is really something that embodies the rule, I would say, of the developer.
Yeah.
Guardrails is sort of how I limit you.
A
paved road is where you can run really fast, because I understand that if I am, as a security person, I'm going to try and limit you, you're going to run all over me and I'm going to lose.
Right.
So I'm going to try and make your life easier while maintaining security. And it's a huge shift of powers. I think the shift to the developer is the biggest shift of powers that happened in the last, probably since the internet came. That's the cloud, and the shift to the developer as far as how things are handled. And also in security, you rely more and more on the developer to do the right thing.
Let me ask this. So it's an interesting point, right? Because we're talking about something that I would suggest most CISOs may not be really up to speed on. I don't know. I mean, I'm not by any means trying to take anything away, but the chain is so long, the bag is so big of all the stuff I've been dragging along, and the speed at which cloud is coming in and changing. How? With all this power, isn't it key we also communicate to the managers, to the executives on how important the cloud is, how they need to look at the cloud? I mean, it's a different kind of discussion, isn't it, than what they're accustomed to?
It is. And I think what happened, though, I think COVID really changed a lot of things. We spent some time together in meetings where you hear about people saying, yeah, you know what, our managers really didn't want to go to the cloud, but we just moved now. And I think more than anything else, more than any time in the history of the cloud first is on everybody's top of mind. Actually, it's interesting. I hear more and more top executives saying, yeah, we're moving to the cloud. I'm talking banks, right? Like Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 10 companies. They're moving, they get it. They understand that elasticity and the ability to move fast is really critical to the success of the business. So, but I think that the discussion does need to change a bit, because a lot of the times, maybe to emphasize the point that you brought up, sometimes there's a concept of, hey, I moved to the cloud to save money. Actually, I don't think it's very rare that you will save money. You're probably, if you could, without the overhead, manage hardware on-prem, it would be cheaper for a larger organization. But you move to the cloud because you need to move fast. Yep. And that's the advantage. You need to think, if we put it in business terms, you really have to think top line rather than bottom line.
Yep,
it's
the gain,
really about
right?
Your ability, exactly, the gain. It's really about your ability to accelerate, launching new capabilities, competing, providing your customers with better experience wherever they are, rather than think about saving money. And that needs to be part of the discussion. It's an enabler. Yep. It's a cost center that generates value rather than look at it as a saving center.
Yeah, investment. I mean, that's how I've always, when I owned my own company, I know that was how my principle was how I looked at people. I was always going to look at them as an investment and how I would coddle and nurture them as opposed to an expense like my electric bill. It was just, I mean, it's just a way of looking at it, right? Just a philosophy.
It is.
So it's the right thing to do, right? So let me ask you, I love to talk about this kind of stuff because, I mean, I always say I'm just sharp enough to cut you. But for me, it seems like there's an amazing, perfect storm of technologies that we've had for a long, long time, but, like chemistry shows us, different quantities mixed together has different results, right? And what I'm specifically talking about is I'm talking about bandwidth, the ubiquitous connectivity, and the unbelievable compute power we have in our fingertips. And my question has to do with the evolution as I kind of see it. Because I understand if I've got to compute with 10 petabytes, I'm going to definitely do that in the cloud. But if it's, 5 meg, 10 meg, even a gig or two, I might do it on my local device. And the speed is not going to really, I mean, the speed in which that compute is delivered, I'm going to start to get a blur on where it's actually coming from. I think we're there. We're there now, right? And some people call this fog, right? And so it begs the question, there's some opportunities to kind of, and this is, I think, really a fundamental premise of the cloud, and I'll get to my point. It's the opportunity to look at something completely differently and do it differently. For example, tear it down, build it up again dynamically every day. Right? Instead, and I mean, think about it, man. If you went to your boss 5 years ago and said you want to do that, right? He would. I mean, you'd be fired. I mean, let alone you couldn't do it, right? You could. But even if you could, it was like. But now that's the new trend. And so I guess, what do you see? Anything in terms of how the dynamics are going to change in the computing environments? I mean, that's not even to bring into the issue of IoT, right?
Yeah, no, I think what you're alluding to is a huge thing. And I think it's another area, just like you talked about the developer and how big of a revolution it is. If you look at the speed that you can now innovate and change things, it's mind-blowing. And I think, if you were a company 20 years ago, you developed something, you had a runway. Listen, you developed it, you had a runway. Now, you developed something 5 years ago, it gets old so fast. So fast. Yes. Because when you develop, I mean, let's take a couple of practical examples. Let's say I developed something I started my own company 5-6 years ago, and I developed something, and I hired this data scientist in order to do some machine learning, and he sat down in his closed room, spoke with a Russian accent, and developed this crazy machine learning.
I know Igor.
Language.
I know Igor.
You know Igor, exactly.
Yes.
It's Igor. His name is Igor. It's always Igor, by the way. So Igor does that. And then 5 years later comes this dude from nowhere, goes in, launches SageMaker on AWS, and literally copies everything it took me 3 years to mature because he just consumes it as a service. Boom, done. He's there. My whole moat, my whole competitive advantage is gone in 2 seconds because it got democratized by as a service. And this happens every day, to your point around, hey, you know what? I'll just tear it down and rebuild it because it's going to take me less time than maintaining this piece of crap. It's happening every day.
And that is, to me, I find it absolutely remarkable to think. I mean, I'm an old guy, man. The first experience I had with computing was when I carried home an Apple IIe in a box, and I remember opening it up and touching the power supply before I put in the extended 80-column text card. Woohoo! I mean, this right, plugging it into that 72 DPI monochrome screen. So. When it's so remarkable. Now we're talking about complete data centers. What would be racks of servers that will just clean new ones? Yeah, they'll be done in a minute. That's amazing stuff.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And I think, what's even crazier, Grant? If you look at the last 10 years, what we got used to being the norm is insanity by itself. Like you and me, we're both old enough. I had an Apple IIe also. I had a Commodore 64. I played with the Spectrum. I was there, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my first assembler code doing something like a Space Invaders. I remember these days.
Yeah.
When you look at what we got used to over the last 10 years, it's insane. First as individuals and definitely as developers or people who consume stuff in the cloud and launch. To your point, even just as, as recent as 10 years ago, you needed the new compute power. You had to go through a process. You don't even think about these things. And it's amazing how fast you get used to stuff.
It's so true. And what's also, I think we forget, to your point, we went so long without it, but now that we have it, we think, how could we have ever lived without it? Right?
I was thinking, Grant, I was literally, and I didn't, but I was about to Google yesterday night when I was I was sitting with my wife, chilling in bed, watching like a movie.
Yeah.
And I was, or a show, I can't even remember what it was, doesn't matter. And I was literally going through my head and I said, interesting, because we were streaming Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And I was saying, interesting, what did people do like 100 years ago? In the evening, what the hell? I wonder if I Google it, will I find by the way, what the hell did they do? Like, what did people do?
Read.
Talk? Read?
Talk, and sleep.
Man, I'm telling you, what did they do before there was, books were very available? What did they do? Like, sing?
Then I know. Then it's like, wow, they actually had to talk? I mean, right. I don't know. But maybe that's why guys like, Newton came up with, this whole notion of asking himself, why'd that apple drop? Right? Because he didn't have anybody to talk to. He was by himself.
He couldn't Google it.
Exactly.
No, I agree. And by the way, I'm not saying, I don't know which one is better or worse. I actually think that to a large extent, this addiction to being on the receiving side of content, it has a lot of downsides to that point of, hey, you're not talking, less social. Yep. It's very easy to escape to other stuff. And to some extent, I can see it with my kids. It's very easy to be on the passive end of stuff. It's just because everything is just so accessible.
Yep.
But I think the biggest point is just like a developer today, back to this developer in cloud, go back to a developer and tell him no. No what?
Right.
That doesn't even, it's just, it's like saying to your kid no. It just goes like, what?
A 2-year-old kid. Why?
Right.
Right? It's not an older kid. That may be in most organizations that you get the older kid response. But I think in the cloud developer world, it's almost that 2-year-old response. Why?
What do you mean no?
Yeah, almost in this incredulous kind of why? What do you mean?
I saw this stand-up comedian. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about like this culture that Amazon instilled in all of us, right? Around the now.
Oh, yeah.
So it started with like 5 days, and then it was 2 days with Prime.
Yeah.
And now there's Prime Now, right? Like I order and I get it now.
It's
and
true.
He was saying, you know what's going to come next? It's Prime before. Before you even ask for it. Because now is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
You need the Prime before. I thought about it. You need it. It's there.
Yeah. It's, it's funny, kind of going back to one of the, I guess what I believe is the negative consequences is that's, I think is awesome. And I think, kudos to Bezos, man. I don't have anything bad to say about the guy and his passion for the company he built. But for me, when you would put something out for 4 billion people to see that you would never say when you're sitting at a dinner table with someone, that's the hard part I have. And that's the kind of stuff that I think can be just so detrimental with this hyper-connected world we're in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's downside. I think that there's
always a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. It's hard to know how much downside there is because we're probably still at the beginning of this revolution, even though it feels like everything around us is there.
No doubt.
But I think it's doesn't matter almost because you can't stop it. So we'll just need to see what happens.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to ask you another question,
yes.
if I can. And this is, I just like these kinds of discussions and hear what smart people like you think. So there are aspects of the accelerated cloud and just Moore's law in general and technology, right, as it's infiltrated our lives. I was thinking about this the other day, There was a time when, I'd buy a refrigerator and that thing would last me for 28 years because there wasn't a green light on it anywhere. All it had was a fan in the back that kicked on when it needed, right? I mean, that was it. And maybe it had an ice maker, right? And so I'd keep that refrigerator for 25 years and it did what it was supposed to do. Stayed cold and froze, right? And now, I've got a refrigerator, but come on, I got to get a new one because that one's the old one. Yeah. This one now has, right, the console that's connected to the internet right? So it's just kind of interesting how technology, albeit so cool, kind of accelerated some consumerization that may not necessarily be necessary. Right?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Think about just iPhones and phones, right?
Yes.
Like you have your phone for more than a year and you literally have the most amazing thing ever. And then after a year, like you get, I need that new one.
Yes.
The computers. And that's why I was saying also, and I think people are getting used now to, I always start a conversation with say, hey, okay, what are you going to do for me lately? It's not about what you've done for me a year ago or 2 years ago. So I think you're right. The consumerization, you don't necessarily need it. Things got cheap. Accessibility to stuff.
You see how much TVs are? Big, giant
crazy.
TVs. They're so cheap. It's like insane.
Insane. And you almost like feel bad not buying a new one, right? Like, it's crazy. Like,
I have to get a bigger wall. Yeah, I mean, in order to get some of these TVs,
But also think, you mentioned Amazon and Bezos. And by the way, I recommend to you and everyone who's listening, check out, there's a podcast called Wondery. And it's a podcast company called Wondery. And they have this podcast, it's called Business Wars. and they go over like history. So one of these things is Walmart versus Amazon. It's just fascinating to listen because they go sort of behind the scenes and stuff like that. Anyway, it's magnificent.
Oh,
What
cool.
I was going to say on Bezos, just think about that, the stuff that he did or that Amazon did in order to increase that consumerization that you were talking about. First came that Prime thing, which is just genius. I don't need to think about it. It's here in 2 days. Okay, and then there's this swipe thing. Buy it now, right? Just buy now.
Yeah.
You go in, you
One
look at
click.
Chick, boom, done.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. You're not even feeling it, right? Like you're done. So I think everything is so accessible. The variety. Prices went down because it's just you buy more. So I think at the end of the day, so that's what I'm saying. I think the last 10 years, cloud is the cloud and e-commerce and everything. And cloud enables a lot of this innovation by itself. So it's going to make innovation even more accelerated.
Yep.
It's such a huge revolution. I think my kid, I have a son who's just turned 13 today.
And, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And like the world he grows in, man,
he's a native, man. He's complete native, right?
It's just like, it's crazy. Like I think the things sometimes we do things still because my wife and I, because we're old and like he looks at it and says, "What?"
Yeah, and you're a kid, man. I mean, believe me, my youngest is 19, but I've got one, close to double his age, and so I got a broad swath. And let me tell you, it's very interesting. And to your point, I've said for a long time, when I say rabbit ears, they mean different things to different kids of mine, right? The older ones, they'll know if I'm talking about a TV in the rabbit ears. The younger ones will look at me like, what are you talking about? Because they don't know snow on a television screen, right? I mean, kids don't know that because there's,
one channel, two channels, three channels. How about a billion channels with a billion movies and a billion shows and that consumption, the Netflix consumption, the binge thing, everything released at the same time. Just say to your son now, or I say to my son, this show, it comes up once a week at a very specific time, and you need to actually wait for it. What?
Oh, it's amazing. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and you may be able to appreciate this. As a young kid growing up with my 4 brothers, we were Irish twins, the first 4 of us, 5 total. My younger brother came a few years later, and every Sunday, man, we were on the floor in front of the TV for Walt Disney. I mean, that was, the world of Disney. That was such a big deal. And to your point, man, dinner was scheduled by it, right? I mean, things were planned around to make sure you had your pajamas on, you were done with your haircut and your bath, and you were, ready to, you ate and you're ready to go to bed as soon as it's over. But I'll never forget it.
I think I miss these times, honestly, and maybe I'm dating myself and you're dating yourself, but I think that it was way better. I felt more family, to be honest. When we were all, even if it was a screen, we were all around the same screen at the same time.
Yep.
Rather than today, each one on his iPad, iPhone, screen, watching. This guy's watching this thing. This one's got. I think that there's. Again, I'm not saying good or bad.
Yeah. No, I get you.
I miss it. I can say today. I go to my son and say, "Hey, Gilad, listen. Let's sit together and watch something." Say, well, what are you watching? Say, I watch whatever you want. Say, no, I watch this. I watch this.
Or they sit down with you, and the whole time they're looking at their phone, flipping through Reddit or doing something else. And it's like, hey, I thought we were watching this movie together. It's true. But here's the other thing I'll say on the flip side. And this is, thank you, Moore's Law and technology and the cloud. All my kids are gone away. So every one of them I can put on a group chat, and I can send a note to all of them, just 2 of them, just one of them. There's this immediate connection with all of them that I have that I wouldn't have on the other side, right? So, I mean,
and let's take this even a step more specific to now. Think about this pandemic without all this technology. I mean, that would be, oh my God, so bad. Like at least here, I have actually when we're done here, I'm meeting a friend and talking with him, which I probably wouldn't have seen physically if the technology wasn't around and so accessible and easy. So I think it's definitely there's advantages.
Yep.
It does isolate though. At the end of the day, it does isolate a bit. Again, good, bad, I don't know. I mean, time will tell. But I think it does have some benefits. But it's like TV, radio, and now whatever we call this era that we're in. You just need to adapt.
Well,
find your place in it.
I just saw this. Maybe you'll know it. And this is, if there's a cloud technology, if there's something because of cloud, this is it, man. And Elon Musk, I think, even tweeted something about it, and it's called Talk or it's basically
Clubhouse.
Yeah, and it's you go in and you're talking with everybody.
Right, Clubhouse. Yeah, it's very cool. I haven't used it. It's invite only, I think now. There's I was trying actually after Elon Musk wrote about it and it became like this big buzz.
Yeah.
And but it's definitely impressive what's going on with this. It's a new type of communication. Actually, I would never think this is interesting also. I mean, I would never think even Twitter would make sense, right?
So I don't know. I'm with you, brother. I am totally with you. But I get it. When I think of this, it's like, really? But look at it go.
Man, I think that the only proof for if something is worthy or not is if it catches on or not. That's
right.
it.
That's right.
So I gave up on trying to predict, at least in these spaces, like the social networking stuff, like this Clubhouse that you just mentioned. If you tell me, hey, you're going to have this room, everybody's going to burst in and just talk.
Yeah.
Say,
are you out of your effing mind?
Like anything I want to do.
Exactly. But the other thing too, TJ, and this speaks also, I think, to this hyper-connected 3.5-4 billion people at everyone's fingertips, because it's true, right? I mean, it's true. If you have something that goes crowdcast, like we were talking about earlier, right? If it got viral and everybody just started going and looking, you could have that kind of audience. And so when you think about things like this 99 cents approach that Apple had, right? That's turned into, billions of dollars. That's what's happening to the world. The slices are getting finer, but there's so many people. If I only have 1.5 million followers, that's enough to give me a healthy living. I don't need 100 million.
Yeah. I think you were talking about, when you talk about this creators world now, like YouTube, or you got followers on Instagram, stuff like that, definitely democratized being a celebrity, sort of. Right? Yes. And I think, you can see the equivalent of that in our world. You can see it's almost very similar to the way that, a creator can come now and say, hey, I start something, I have a follower, I'll produce production level stuff, like high production level stuff at my own computer. Yep. I'll do Final Cut editing, and then I'll put it on the cloud or on YouTube, and then suddenly, boom, I'm a celebrity. Yep. Same thing, by the way, today, you can compare that to what developers do. You can be a standalone one person and launch a business. Yep. Right? And write an app, use the Amazon cloud or the Azure cloud or the Google cloud, and just go live and, market it with all, do social media, do some advertising. It's unbelievable. And I think that to your point around 99 cents on an app or stuff like that, there's so many more opportunities right now. Oh. And it's so much democratized. Yes. And on the flip side, the barrier to entry went down, which brings the level of noise up. Which brings again the barrier to entry again back, because you have to start getting above the noise. So it's interesting. It pushes the envelope on everything, and it's really fascinating to be in this to live through it. And I think for us, it's even more interesting because we have context of how it looked like before.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And even to a certain degree, having an influence on it. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, and I mean, I'm proud of this. This is my Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame. But the first Macintosh computer that Alaska Airlines ever purchased, I sold it to him. Same as the one the first one Weyerhaeuser Corporation ever purchased. I sold it to him. You know, and I got other amazing stories when I was in Alaska. British Petroleum, they were a deck shop. They bought the first DEC 9000 on the planet, but all IBM PCs on the desktop. Well, there was a capability, if you had a brain, to tunnel AppleTalk protocol inside of DECnet. Basically, it had a DECnet header and trailer, which meant it could carry AppleTalk anywhere on the planet because that's where DECnet went. So it enabled a really cool capability. You could take a VAX with this software, turn it into a file server for all your Mac users, flip that account completely globally. And, you know, that was fun stuff back in the day when, you know, you're up against IBM and SNA and all that stuff. You know, I mean, it was fun times. Times.
Yeah, it was. And again, I think that there's elements in that sort of style, lifestyle, work style, competition style that I miss. I grew up there also. Everything, I think things became so much faster. You remember that movie with Adam Sandler, Click?
Yep. Yes.
So a lot of the time it feels like
yes. Like, he woke up and his kids were grown up.
Everybody's grown up.
Yes.
Whatever, you're done and you missed everything. And I think we're getting consumed so fast by these other things. Yeah. And I do find myself, to be honest, like I find myself saying, shit, I didn't talk with my kid for like 3 days. He was in his screen. I was in this Zoom home office all day trying to do stuff. And there's always distractions all over the place. And it's click. Like seriously, it just goes by. And it's so...
It's the one element, brother. It is, you know, take it from me, man, the guy with no hair that's definitely got you by a couple of years. You know, it's the one steady, right? That it's TikTok. You know, there's no variance to it, man. It's just, it plows through the greatest times and the most stressful times, right? It's all the time. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah, well, hey, this has been awesome, and I know you've got a split, so I really thank you. I appreciate it. Was cool, man. I appreciated it a bunch. I got to know you a little better, plus had some fun conversation. You know, I'm excited about Moore's Law, TJ. I love the fact that it's still going like it is. I love the fact that we're involved in technology that's right out on the whitewater of that wave. And I really love the stuff that you've brought to the company and the influence you've had on not only the company, but the CloudGuard platform in particular. Yeah. So kudos to you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun. We should definitely, I'll be very, very happy to be back in due time.
Soon, I hope. Hey, awesome. Have a great night.
Thanks, and man. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, another one's in the books. This was a fun one, talking with TJ Gonen, who heads the cloud security products for Checkpoint Software. So, hey, thank you again. We really appreciate you listening. If you like what you're hearing, please tell your friends, subscribe, share, and hopefully we'll hear you back on the next episode of Talking Cloud. Thanks so very much.